Hello everybody! Today we are going to be talking about how we measure things. This is a skill that lies at the heart of everything that we do in physics, and most of you at this point have listened to what I said and your immediate response was, but I already know how to measure things. And most of you are probably correct, but it's these stupid little mistakes that we make in measuring that really compound themselves in physics and lead to bigger problems later. So we're going to be discussing measurement. We're going to be discussing using the correct units and how we can measure something that is incredibly tiny. So, our objective today is that you will learn how to use and describe the use of rules, which is any sort of thing that you use to measure. Most of us would refer to it as a ruler, and understand the difference between systems of units. And those systems of units that I'm referring to are the legendary metric system and the English system. The metric system being the system that the rest of the world uses, and the English system being the system that we use here in the United States most commonly. Now, the other concept that we're going to talk about today, and actually the first thing we are going to deal with, is this idea that I call length. And length has kind of some very special rules attached to it. It's not as simple as it immediately appears. So let's go ahead and talk about length to begin with. Length is the measurement or extent of something from end to end, the greater of the two or three dimensions of a body. That's a great statement, Mr. Coltman. What in the world does it mean? Let me break this down for you. If, for say, let me get a nice little pen here. If I have a rectangle is two-dimensional. It does not have width, or it does not have depth, I should say. It could have width if you wanted to call that, but it definitely has one side that is longer than the other. In that case, we were talking about this side right here in red as opposed to this side right here in blue. Now that's easy to see that the red side is clearly longer. The red side is what we will always refer to as the length of the object. You cannot say that this rectangle is simply short and extremely wide. Okay, that is not correct. This is the length of the rectangle, and the other thing you could refer to it as the width or the height, but it's anything except for the length. Now this works the same way in three dimensions. If I have myself a lovely cube here, all of my sides are equal, but for some reason my lovely cube, this is going to turn out really terribly, but I'm going to go with it anyway. My lovely cube is extremely, extremely deep. It goes from here all the way back here, and I realize that this is a terrible image, but I'm going to go with it anyway. This dimension right here, the depth, is what we would call the length of the cube. So whatever, if you're measuring things, no matter how many dimensions you're measuring, which is probably going to be 2 or 3 unless you somehow figure out how to measure in the 4th dimension, the longer of your 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions is going to be what we refer to as length. Now, units of measurement, most of us are very familiar with the English system over here. The English system is where we have inches, yards, pounds, miles would be another one that's not on there. This is the system that is commonly used in the United States, and it's pretty much used nowhere else. It is based on a series of numbers which have no obvious connection to one another. So, for instance, there are 12 inches in a foot, but there are 5,280 feet in a mile and 3 feet in a yard. The connections are not immediately obvious, but we like it because it's already the thing that we know. Most scientists use this one over here, which is the metric system. The metric system, or the SI system, System International is what that stands for, is a base 10 system. Every time I have 10 of something, I go up. So if I have 10 millimeters, that is a centimeter. 10 centimeters gives me a decimeter, so on and so forth. And to help you guys with learning the metric system, I've included this handy little metric conversions chart. I am going to be looking for this on your notes, and you're going to be using this frequently. So please pause the video right now and draw this thing, because it's really important, and I'm going to be bringing it up in class to show you how to use it. Now, when we're talking about how do we measure things, we need to be dealing with objects of all sorts of sizes. We've got really large objects, we've got really small objects, we've got objects in between. And so these four things that I have right here are the general instruments that we will use to measure things in physics. Starting with the micrometer, which is used for incredibly small objects, the ruler, which is used for objects roughly the size of a piece of paper, meter sticks, objects more like the size of a tiny human, and then finally the tape measure for objects like the size of rooms. These all have specific uses, but knowing how to use them correctly and when to use each one is key. So let's start out first with the micrometer. The micrometer, as I said before, is used for measuring incredibly tiny pieces. And as you can see from the little animation that's going on here, it's not going to be very useful for anything larger than a small marble. Now, what you do with the micrometer is that you are going to gradually twist this thing known as the ratchet, and it moves this long piece known as the thimble. And the thimble rotates, and it gets you incredibly precise measurements for something like this. So one complete revolution of the ratchet moves the spindle a distance of 1/2 of a millimeter. So this is an incredibly small distance, and it's important to know that the top of the sleeve reads in full millimeters. So my object right here is, we know it's got to be around, let's see, there it goes, about 13 millimeters. But it's not exactly 13 millimeters, so we need to go to the next level of accuracy. The bottom of the sleeve reads in 1/2 millimeters, and the thimble, which is this rotating part right here, reads in 1/10 of a millimeter. If you ever really need something to be super accurate, the micrometer is the tool to use. Now, you will not be using a micrometer very much in class because we rarely need this level of accuracy. But if you do, this is the tool that you will be using. The ruler is going to be the tool that you wind up using the most. Now, most rulers have two sides to them, and as I draw this little line, which is not at all straight, I'm dividing the two sides. On the top, you will see we have centimeters. Centimeters are a metric unit, and as such, every 10 centimeters we move up to the next unit, and these little lines right here are divided into millimeters. Just going to write milli here so you get the idea. So 10 millimeters gives me 1 centimeters, or 1 centimeter. 100 centimeters is going to give me a meter. And if I ever, for some reason, get to 1,000 meters, I will get to a full kilometer. Now on the bottom side is the side that most of us go to immediately. This is the side that reads in inches. 12 inches being 1 foot. There's 3 feet in 1 yard, so on and so forth. The most common mistake that I see, especially early on in physics, is people not paying attention to which side of the ruler they used. If I tell you to measure something in metric units, you have to be using what in this case is the top side of the ruler. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is basically a giant ruler, and it's this concept of a meter stick versus a yardstick. And as you can see from the picture, if I draw this little line right here, a meter stick and a yardstick are definitely not the same thing. A meter stick is longer than a yardstick, so make sure you know which one you are using. In most cases, it's not going to make a big deal. However, if you're measuring things in full yards or full meters, then it is incredibly important. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about the tape measure. The tape measure is basically a flexible ruler or a flexible yardstick. It can be in either metric or English units, and this thing is used for really large objects. Say you're measuring for a rug in your living room and you know it needs to be 12 feet long. That would be the use of a tape measure. Is for really big objects. So in summary, we talked about English versus metric units. This is going to be a key reoccurring theme that happens in class quite a bit. You need to know your metric ladder, which was that object that I told you to pause the video at. You will be using this quite a bit in class. We talked about what tools to use for measurement, starting with the micrometer, which was the smallest, or for measuring very small things, and ending with the tape measure, which was in big things. And we talked about how length is always the largest of our dimensions that we measure. So, thank you very much. I will be looking for notes in class, and have a great day.